just now. Welcome, everybody. Yesterday, we talked with regulators on stage here. We had three, I don't know, for those of you that made it yesterday, we had three regulators on stage from the kind of three most progressive fintech markets in the region, talking really about the value, the importance of regulation, not just to the system, not just to consumer protection and managing risk, but also the opportunity that it's creating, that smart regulation can create in building innovation and creating jobs and opportunities. Today, we're going to look a little bit, we're looking at a different direction. We're going to focus really on the RegTech opportunity itself. Obviously, regulation plays a massive role in supporting the development of RegTech markets, but today we're going to focus on the innovation opportunity around regulatory technology, look a little bit at the regional context, what is the opportunity here for innovators, and some of the challenges of scaling RegTech businesses in this region and globally. So perhaps first of all, we just get a sort of sense of who we've got in the room. Who here works? Put your hand up. Who here works for a bank? Who here works for an innovation company or a RegTech or a fintech? So sort of mainly an innovation audience. So look, great combination of panelists here today. We span central banks, fintech, central bankers, RegTech companies, and people that have come from banking. So this is your opportunity also to ask questions. Please make sure that if you want to ask a question at any point during the session, please raise your hands. Alex, I want to come to you first. What is you're a central banker by trade, but by background, but also now a consultant with various organisations. What does the RegTech opportunity look like for you from where you sit in the Netherlands?
Well, I think we first need to have a look at what is the global market for this. If you look at our regular financial institutions, we see that they spend globally around 200 billion every year on compliance costs. So we're talking about a tremendous opportunity from that perspective, because RegTech tends to address this. They tend to provide solutions that may help reducing those costs. Now, the global RegTech market is much smaller than 200 billion. However, we're talking only a small fraction, depending on who you ask. But probably the global RegTech market is sized 5 to 10 billion total size globally. That means that there is a tremendous opportunity out there for these companies to have a massive impact still, because it's only still such a small market compared to what is really needed to bring down those compliance costs. Now, from a more local perspective, I must say that I'm from the Netherlands, so my best point of view is also the Dutch market. We tend to think of ourselves as being ahead of the curve.
Yep.
But at the same time, what I see is that a lot of companies aren't that far. They aren't that far ahead of the curve, because we still see client files being printed, so on paper, not even digital. We see companies that have barely migrated from Windows XP.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, even in my local market, despite us thinking that we're pretty advanced, and we do have some reasons to think or to be a little bit proud of ourselves there, because we do have some guidelines on, for example, how to deal with AI in compliance and stuff like that, but that actually being applied is a whole different matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Barbara, you've also sort of switched sides, so to speak, having come from, I think, UBS, you mentioned, now working in a scaling RegTech company. What's that transition been like? What were the motivations for you personally to switch sides? And what do you see at CoinFirm as the regulatory opportunity in the markets that you're in, or indeed in markets that you're looking at?
Well, first of all, the switch that I've done from investment banking compliance into RegTech was something I had no idea about 15 years ago. So 15 years ago, when I started my career, there was just a handful IT vendors available for banking, and we haven't seen the numbers that you've just quoted. So I guess the key takeaway from my side is the space is changing so much that we may not know still today where it's going in the future.
Yeah.
So whenever I look at different forecasts for RegTech, I think to link to your numbers, there are some forecasts about RegTech growing to 10, 20, or even 30 billion for the next couple of years, depending on which report you're reading. I think the consensus is that the sector will be growing. In terms of the specific numbers, that depends on various reasons, various aspects. I would say for fintech, for RegTech specifically, it's very closely connected to fintech development. So from my experience in banking, there's, let's say, a limited amount of solutions that banking needs. In terms of the fintech, they're much more open for the RegTech solutions. So I would say one factor is the fintech growth. Another factor is the regulations. So RegTech obviously responds to changing regulatory requirements, and depending on where those regulatory requirements go, new solutions may come up. Just to touch with your first question on my move, it's something that I would say requires a lot of let's say mind shifting. I think going into technology, you have to let's say open yourself to understanding the technology. I've gone to the limit of actually doing software development diploma and coding myself. That's not necessarily what you need to do. I'm seeing a lot of talented individuals moving from banking, from fintech to RegTech, and that works. So it's the growth of fintech is also opening a lot of career opportunities that we haven't seen before.
I mean, just wanted a quick follow-up question. Actually, you mentioned an important point. Can you hear me? Okay. It's an important. You mentioned there the sort of the potential size of the market differs. I think you can't hear me. You mentioned an interesting point there. The sort of potential market size is different depending on which report you read. I mean, that's largely because the kind of lines are blurred, aren't they, between what is fintech and what is RegTech. Do you think that matters? Do you think the spinning out of RegTech from fintech does it need sort of clear rules around it so that regulators know who to go to?
I think there's definitely not, let's say, crystal clear definition of what RegTech is. To give you one example, there are many fintechs and also banks who develop their own RegTech solutions. Do you count that into RegTech growth or not? Because it's a proprietary solution. So certainly there are some peculiarities within the RegTech definition itself. I think though that regardless of like wherever you look, the growth is certainly there. I would want to point out, though, that the growth of the sector does not necessarily mean the growth everywhere in RegTech. So where I come from is the compliance perspective, and one of the things I've done for a different RegTech, not for CoinFirm, was develop KYC solutions for banking. Now, over the years, we've seen a decline in actually KYC solutions demand from banking because the market got saturated. So I think being in a RegTech market, it's extremely important to be agile and to be flexible, adjust to the market needs. So I had to go through that myself where I'm focused on the AML, and at some point I just had to be flexible and go into a different direction just to respond to what the market needs.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that, Barbara. Oh, thanks. Always have sound problems at this event for some reason. It's disappointing. Does that work? Very good. Ahmed, let's turn to you. We spoke a little bit before we came on stage here, about your business, about your company. UK founded, I believe, UK based. You're here now in this region. I think relatively new in this region, but clearly, you see opportunities here. What does the regional RegTech or customer opportunity look like to you, relative to the other markets that Shufti Pro is in?
Sure. So, regardless of the market, whenever we talk about aligning compliance and whenever we talk about aligning technology together, I believe KYC and AML are the key elements to that, Simon. Uh, because adherence to different regulatory requirements around the world, if we talk about specifically the MENA region, DIFC, DFSA, if we talk about globally, GDPR, PCI, and if we talk about different privacy acts, they are formidable, right? So having a right solution for all your requirements where you can, make sure that the onboardings are done smoothly, where you make sure that the customers you're onboarding, they are who they say to be, they are not involved in any kind of money laundering activities, and you as a business have the proof of verification saved with you for the future regulatory requirements and references. So I believe it not only adds to the growth of the company itself, but it also helps in improving efficiency and enhancing the reliability of the business. Because by the end of the day, you provide those reports to different regulators around the world, and based on those regulatory requirements, you find a service provider that fits your business requirements in a positive manner.
Let's go to the audience. Do we have any questions for our panelists? Ask away. It's your chance, your opportunity. No? Do we have any RegTech companies here, actually? Just come to you. I was going to get a comment from... are you in the region, or
Sorry?
are you based here? Or is your...
Yeah, I'm in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
So my question is
Just a bit closer, sir. Sorry.
yeah, how do you see blockchain playing into the bigger picture over here? How do you see it relating into this? I'm sorry if it's out of the context, but...
It's not. We're going to come to that at the end. If we can come back to... unless anybody wants to have I think, Barbara, you... Oh, doesn't matter. It's a blockchain question, so we'll come to that. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that in the sort of next round. Both these guys have got experience in that area, so we can touch on that at the end. So thank you for that. Let's then look at some of the practicalities and obviously the challenges for regulators in what is now a very really quite a fluid market. It's quite volatile economically, macroeconomically. Where do you think are the challenges for regulators in understanding how to enable the RegTech markets to form? Because clearly, in this region, we have regulation. The regulators are moving at different speeds. Western Europe, the US, taking a sort of more sort of proactive view in the role of regulation in enabling markets to form. What's the central bank view of how to build the RegTech ecosystem? What are you looking for to make this market work in the favour of both consumers and the system?
I guess from a regulator perspective, it's important to not obstruct any RegTech solutions. I think that is the biggest thing, because as a regulator, we are typically not the innovator. We are not going to be the first to adopt any new technology. That is just not what regulators do. We are responsible for making sure that institutions live up to the requirements they meet, or they successfully, have their compliance processes in order. How they do it is up to them. So if they want to innovate in there, they should probably have the freedom to do it. And I think that is, from a regulator perspective, you should be having sufficient room to be able to do that kind of stuff. If you have a regulator that says, I want you, you're doing this and I want you to keep doing exactly what you're doing today, then you have a bit of a problem. I think in my home country, we're pretty flexible. We allow institutions to pick their own way in which they live up to, their compliance requirements. And then we respond based on what they come up with. So if they want to use some advanced technology, if they want to start using machine learning, AI stuff, they should have the opportunity to. But then, of course, we're going to look critically into that development, and then it's up to us to come up with some guidelines to make sure that we don't kill the innovation, but at the same time make sure that we can still audit it.
The sandbox model, has that worked for for you within the Netherlands?
There are sandboxes. For example, in the Financial Markets Authority, they have a specific sandbox designated to just play around, and I guess it works. But at the same time, getting out of the sandbox might be a little bit harder.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And the relationship that you have with the sort of the fintechs that are coming to you, I mean, has that got, has the bank become more receptive to having a stronger, better relationship with RegTech?
Yeah, I think so. We are very open to improving first of all our own processes as well, and there we can also work together with stuff. But the thing is always, if you work for a government institution, if you want to do anything, you have to put out a tender. Anyone can respond. It's a really slow process before anyone gets implemented. So even though we have positive experience with talking to parties, it always takes us some extra time before we can actually do something together.
Barbara, let's turn to you, and then Ahmed will come to you for a follow-on similar question. We were talking a little bit before about how you build these businesses and how you build sort of strong relationships to make them succeed. What does that look like in practice for a company like yourselves?
Strong relationships with the regulators.
No, with the customer. The practicalities are sort of of scaling the operation. How is that going for the business?
Yeah, so I think what I'm seeing across RegTech sector is a mixture of companies who are responding and listening to their clients versus companies who have the visionaries and believers in their own idea. And it's a delicate thing, really, because if you set up your company, your fintech, RegTech, you may have a vision that something is needed at the market and that something will work. Then you come to the market, and it takes a little bit of, let's say, courage, but also self-acknowledgement to recognize if your idea is not working. And I think it's very important to be able to kill an idea at early stage if you see from the customer's perspective that your RegTech solution is not necessarily what they need. So really the listening skills here is the key factor, and trying to find out from the customer feedback what is actually that they need, what they respond well to, what works for them. And just if I could come back to your point about the regulators and the question you've asked, I think what we're seeing in our space in terms of the cooperation with the regulators is they're not having. I'm quite sympathetic to them. With the amount of RegTech solutions at the market, they do need a little bit of expertise, especially in cases like blockchain analytics, to actually review the software solutions from their regulated entities. However, what I'm also seeing, at least in our space, is that the regulators, even though they cannot point out to a specific solution, they do have the power of sending, let's say, underlying messages to the market. And if they say, maybe not endorse a specific tool, but if they give comments about specific solutions, it's very quickly absorbed by the market. So there's this delicate line of trying to be open to different solutions versus not being favorable towards one or two solutions at the market.
Well, that will certainly come to that in a minute, because of course the whole crypto blockchain space is something that regulators everywhere are kind of taking very different approaches, understandably, and having to be very cautious. Perhaps first, though, Ahmed, let's come to you for the question. One, relationships with regulators for you. What has that looked like? You're in multiple markets now, and now you're here. And what are the sort of the practicalities? I think you were talking before about you need to innovate at pace. You need to deliver solutions at pace. But you've also got to build a relationship and not innovate too fast, haven't you? Because otherwise you kind of lose the trust and the confidence of the customer.
Right. So talking from a regulatory perspective, Simon, as you mentioned, I've been working in different markets now, dealing with different regulators. So the thing that I have realized specifically in the GCC region is that the regulators and the subsidiaries or the banks that fall under the regulators, they need to be on the same page first, right? So we together have to make sure that the regulations that are passed by the central bank, it could be of any country, they should be easy for the subordinates or the subsidiaries or the different banks so they can adhere to that. Talking from another perspective, for example, let's say if we make a regulation today that you have to verify your businesses or the customers you onboard to, let's say, ABC data source, right? Now, that data source is provided by the government, but not every company in the region has the access. So again, there are only 2 or 3 big giants. They have the access. So we are killing innovation here, right? We are killing chances here for different organizations to pursue and come up with new ideas. Now, talking about the customer success and the growth, I totally agree with Barbara. She mentioned that listening counts, understanding your customer concern, making sure that you are providing a solution that fits to their business requirements is the thing that counts the most. And talking about the innovation, I believe you have to come up in the market with a solution that fits all the business requirements. But certainly, then there are certain instances where businesses come and they have a different requirement. So your solution should be customizable. So you should have the ability to custom tailor the solution based on the client requirements in order to be present in the competition and in order to make sure that you stand alone from the rest in the market.
Yeah, it's a process, isn't it? I mean, you win the customer, and then you can start the relationship, really.
Of course.
Now, I think you said you're relatively, you're new in this region. Who are your customers? What's the customer span look like?
So in the last 3 months, we have partnered up with over 10 companies from this region. This includes banks from Jordan. This includes a very renowned cryptocurrency exchange in the region. This includes an insurance company in Dubai and a bank in Dubai as well. So we are striving best to make sure that the businesses in the region, they have the latest onboarding experience, again, which adheres to the regulations by the central bank of the UAE and, of course, the central banks of different countries as well. So what I've realized is when we talk about the complete GCC region, if we can make sure that the banks, the regulatory bodies, they are on the same page, then we would give more chances to the companies like us so they can come and, come up with different innovations. And at the end, customers would be getting benefited through those advanced and automated AI-based solutions.
Yeah. Well, you raised an interesting point there on the same page. As I say, we had a panel yesterday of 3 regulators from the region. But the region as a whole is moving at a very different pace. Certainly, the Gulf region, some markets are really racing ahead, others are not so sure. The challenge, however, though, is that harmonization is quite a way off in reality.
Absolutely.
Is that a problem for you, or is that perhaps an opportunity for you as a RegTech company that's now here and in this space selling across the region?
Well, being a RegTech company, talking about different regulatory requirements, it is an opportunity, but sometimes it turns out to be a problem. It turns out to be a problem how? Because let's say if Central Bank of Qatar came up with a regulatory requirement where they have this gateway that you need access to, then again, as a RegTech company, you have to be physically present in Qatar. You need to have an office in Qatar. Just giving an example, right? To get access to all those gateways and to make sure that you are compliant with the regulatory requirements. So this is a challenge. But when we talk about other regulatory requirements where it's merely very easy for the companies like us to get access to each and everything following different procedures, protocols, then it's relatively easier for us to serve that market and to provide them with the AI-based solutions that help their clients to undergo a very smooth and reliable customer verification process.
Thank you very much. Let's now then turn to kind of the final few minutes of this session. We had a question there about blockchain standards and regulating for the future. We're here. Dubai wants to position itself as a hub for the future of money. Really, they've launched the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. There are other central banks in the region that are piloting central bank digital currencies. What's the sort of Western Europe, Netherlands perspective on the need to regulate for this kind of this sort of next generation of the digital economy?
I think this is a really nice example to look at because In the Netherlands and in Europe, the regulation of crypto asset service providers is very new. In fact, just last year, they all became regulated. So now these companies have to register themselves and they have to live up to anti-money laundering and counterterrorism finding regulations like all the other institutions. But this is super recent development. And they're bringing a lot of new things. For example, you're dealing with a very new system that's running on top of a open blockchain technology where anyone can at least observe the transactions actually happening on a blockchain, which is something that we don't have anywhere in any other financial system. So that is very interesting to start with. And then you see both new challenges and opportunities appearing around that. And in terms of challenges, obviously we have seen a lot about how these crypto assets are potentially being abused to send money to people that shouldn't be receiving that money. But at the same time, it also gives rise to new providers, like, for example, a company like Chainalysis, which is a company that tries to de-anonymize the transactions that go on this pseudonymous blockchain. And they're pretty effective at that. Huh? So they are a solution provider, and they provide anyone in this space, all these companies, with the ability to see what their customers are doing on an open blockchain. I think that's a really powerful development. So, for example, if your customer is receiving money from a known darknet market, you can immediately just freeze their funds, send it to the relevant authorities, and it's perfect. At the same time, we also see that they tend to overpromise a little bit in terms of what they are ultimately delivering, because if you on an open blockchain observe money going, for example, from one major exchange to the other major exchange, it doesn't reveal anything about who is the party at that platform. So in that sense, you still are limited in your ability to see, but you can see a little bit more than what is usually the case. Like the example I gave, if there's ever a transaction coming from, has Silk Road in the past, I don't know the darknet markets nowadays, Silk Road has been rolled up, maybe there's a 2.0 version, but if you see that kind of stuff happening, you can immediately apprehend those people, and I think that is at least a development that's worth celebrating, although we have to realize that as a regulator, we have to understand that. We have to see the opportunity here, but we also have to point out the limitations there, that if institutions are applying this new technology, they're not done yet. They still have, we're still expecting something more of them as well.
Okay, Barbara, here yesterday, various sort of talks about crypto, blockchain, new rules evolving in this region. How do you see the opportunity for you in this region versus other markets at the moment?
So just to recap, Confirm is a blockchain analytics company as well, like a similar one you mentioned, Chainalysis. We do similar thing differently, but basically we're tracing assets, crypto assets, and we provide various solutions to meet the anti-money laundering requirements for crypto assets specifically. Now, in terms of the opportunities, I think opportunities are mainly where the market is developing and where the market is properly regulated. Now, there's, just like we discussed before about different definition, the definition of properly regulated would be different depending on who you ask. I think specifically for the region here, it is extremely, in my view at least, important to make sure that that regulatory ground is set to the level that allows innovation, that brings new businesses, but also that is recognizable internationally as a strong jurisdiction. And I think that's a big challenge, but an opportunity at the same time ahead of the region to make sure that that regulatory basis is there. And from our perspective, from blockchain analytics, I'm absolutely convinced that every single virtual asset service provider needs blockchain analytics to be to properly hedge against the risks. So opportunities for us will be in line with the growth of virtual assets providers registered and regulated in the region.
Do you see, based on what you're learning here, and seeing here and in other regions, do you see it as sort of, or feel as a real opportunity, as an innovator in the space to help the regulator form these new rules?
Yes, certainly. Of course, I do, and I think the opportunity for the region is enormous. That I'm basing on the fact of there are some regulatory frameworks already in place. I come from the European Union, where just like we've mentioned before, the regulatory framework is already there. At the same time, there are a number of companies who have, let's say, unpleasant experiences with those regulatory frameworks. So if the region here is able to create the environment that supports the companies from the very beginning, that has open communication, that has discussions and innovative approach, that is going to work. There is a big disclaimer though. The time span for that is very short. So I think the region needs to act quickly.
You've got to move fast. Perhaps a final couple of words from you, Ahmed. What does the future hold for Shufti Pro, globally, but in this region? Are you looking at the crypto blockchain space in the round as a kind of as a place to move next and to move, exactly as Barbara said, to move fast into?
Right, Simon. So as you know, that it had been 3 months that we are here in Dubai, in DIFC. But even before that, when we were present in UK, States, Cyprus, and Sweden, we had a number of customers here in Dubai. So coming from that perspective, the regulatory bodies are changing the requirements quite frequently, which are enabling these companies to stand up and look for the right solution provider available in the market, right? So talking about the growth, I do see a very good opportunity, because whether you talk about a blockchain-based platform, a crypto exchange, a bank, an insurance company, or let's say a platform that's based on the gaming, every platform needs to onboard customers. And whenever they need to onboard customers, that's where we kick in and we make sure that their customers are who they claim to be they are, right? So we restrict fraudsters and imposters to gain unprivileged access to their platform. And it's beneficial for them as a business. We simplify their onboarding journey, and within 30 to 60 seconds, we make sure that their client is onboarded, which eventually helps businesses around the world and even in this region to maximize their ROI.
Okay. Just final words. We must close it there. But just a quick statement from each of you. If we come back here in a year's time, what will we see on certainly on the sort of CBDC crypto front? What will we see in it? Where do you expect we'll be in a year from now?
Well, I expect the CBDC, the hype, to die down a little bit, to be honest, because that is.
You're asking for a lot at this point, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it had to be optimistic, but I also need to be realistic. There, there's lots of initiatives out there, but I think that for a large part, there's also a lot of hype out there. That's always the thing with new developments, new technology. So we always have to take a step back and see what ultimately thrives and what turns out to be just a hype and disappear.
Yeah. Is that something? Would you use that one if you like?
Yeah, I think it's not an easy question, to be honest. It's looking into the future with so many dependencies. Yeah. My hand would be looking at what's happening at the moment. It seems like the region wants to focus on metaverse, NFT, this kind of, let's say, sector of the blockchain, emerging technologies. So if that goes well, I hope I'll visit Dubai in metaverse next time.
Good. Well, that's good. Let's make that happen. And Ahmed, a final word to you. Where's your business going to be here in this region?
Right. So considering the current trends in the market, I believe that the next 1 year would be of great success, because we have seen a lot of interest from the businesses here in this region. And it's again just the fact that they are pretty much new. They want to make sure that they have a simplified onboarding journey in place, and that's where we kick in. So I do see some great opportunities. I do see some great, when it comes specifically to the technology, I do see some great endeavors that we are going to mark on in the coming year by Shafti.
Well, we must leave it there. Thank you. Please thank our panelists for this.
Thank you so much to Simon, and thank you to the panelists. Yet another really interesting and relevant conversation, also showcasing. I mean, we live in very progressive times filled with possibilities, but of course, there's so much exponential technology going on, and it's all about, how it's all interweaved together.